All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dispersing the Fog. This is episode 12. We're up to a dozen, Paul. It's May 25th, and lots of stories to get to this week. We've got an update on the World Junior Hockey Players trial out of London, Ontario. We're going to talk about some verdicts, some sentencings out of Calgary, drug-related crime issues out in Calgary that may or may not have similar results or some worthy comparisons to make out there. There's been talk well used to be the second biggest RCMP detachment in Canada. Now it's the biggest, and now they're talking about in Kelowna potentially leaving or reassessing their contract with the RCMP. We're going to talk about that and some other things that have happened in the last couple of weeks with the RCMP across the country that might tie into that. And as well, a story we didn't have time to get to last week was this situation in Halifax with some lawyers who were involved in a lawyer who was ultimately committed suicide had been caught doing some inappropriate things with clients, and so there's some fallout from that. Billy Sparks in Halifax. So uh, before we get to all that, let's catch up, Paul. How are
Well,
things?
how about you? It looks like you've been running or something.
Well, I'm working. Okay, so we're gonna give a good show to the audience here, but I'll say up front, I'm working on maybe 2.5, 3 hours sleep from last night. So this weekend is the annual Cabot Trail Relay. It's the 35th edition, and I this is my fifth time running with the Highland Hopefuls, a team that's about middle of the pack of the 70 teams that compete in this annual. It's a trek that goes right around the Cabot Trail. It goes counterclockwise, starts and ends in Bedeck. And this year I ran a leg going from the park inside the Cape Breton Highlands National Park and ending in Camp. Started at 12:30 a.m. and ended around 2, just before 2 o'clock in the morning. And so a few hours sleep and then off to the see the final leg getting into Bedeck this morning and a little lobster dinner afterwards. So uh, great feeling. Ran a good time. Felt good about all that and lots of fun.
So
Fun,
you
good
call
event.
that you call that fun running at 30 till 2 in the morning?
It's amazing. So you got to think about all these things, right? You're used to exercising at a certain time of day, getting some sleep. Well, so I put a ball game on that I didn't care about. Got a good nap in yesterday afternoon. Up and drove down to Camp and was all set to go. Just like it was, just like it was early evening.
I
So.
was I was in bed at that time dreaming of running, so
Oh man, it's great. Like there was a team, the female team that set a bunch of records. They came down from Ontario, from Queen's University, I think. This is a team from Maine that comes up. Lots of Halifax runners, other yeah, PEI runners. Yeah, it's quite a weekend and really busy around the Cabot Trail.
at my end, I think I'm now over the jet lag.
Okay, good.
Right, this being old and being, 7 time zones away for 5 weeks, really throws you off. But there's something I meant to say last week about being that far away, like being in a rather remote area in Rarotonga, and our grandkids there. They grew up in a community where there's no building higher than a coconut tree. That's sort of the rules.
Yeah,
And they have one television station that works sometimes. They rely on streaming and marketing, or streaming and downloads and things like that to get information, get entertainment. So when we took them to Tahiti, which is 750 miles or so, well, yeah, about that, to the northeast, it was a big deal for them because the three boys, 11, 8, and 5, had never been off the island together.
okay.
And so this was a shared experience of going to Tahiti. And when they got there, it was really funny. It's worth hearing. Like it was like the things that amazed them, the traffic, the motorcycles with the straight pipes and the noise and the exhaust, things you don't see in rural.
Yeah.
Escalators. They saw an escalator and it was like up and down the escalator.
That's like
And
space age stuff.
an elevator, what button to push? I've seen these in the movies, but I've never seen one live. And then a funny moment was the 11-year-old and I were walking in the hotel lobby in Papiete, and we're going to get the car. And he goes, "Where's the car?" I said, "Well, it's under the floor." He goes, "How did it get there?" I said, "There's a parking garage." "Well, how do you get into it?"
Good
Totally,
question.
all this stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Lights on all night. Why do the buildings have their lights on all night? This is, things you'd never think of in our life.
Yeah.
After all of that and all this naivety, night, what the most amazing thing was, what was the first thing they wanted to do in Tahiti? Go to McDonald's. That they wanted to go to McDonald's every day. We didn't do that.
Yeah.
And the last day they went home, the McDonald's at the airport. One boy ate. They left at 7 in the morning. It's open at 5. He ate his McDonald's there. The other one ate it on the plane, and the 5-year-old took it home, the 2.5, 3 hour flight home, ate it at home, and they got the McDonald's bag to bring to school, bring his lunch to school the next day to show that he had actually been to McDonald's.
Wow.
That just shows you how. And last point on it, the 11-year-old said the patties aren't very big and they don't really have any flavor. The only thing you taste is the cheese. I thought, you're right.
Well, every two universals. Everybody loves McDonald's and everybody discovers that about McDonald's cheeseburgers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then the other thing that happened this week, a courier truck pulled up, I think it was on Thursday or Friday, and I thought, what's this courier truck doing here? And they delivered something, and here's what I got.
Oh, what do we have?
Uh, the
Well,
author
well,
copies of the book that's coming out in 2 weeks.
Anatomy of a Cover-Up. Wow, that's a nice looking cover. You'll be
The,
happy.
the truth about the RCMP and the Nova Scotia massacres. And I think that when we get to that 2 weeks hence, I think people are going to be stunned because it takes a while to discuss some of the things that you and I and others have learned in this process.
Paul, on top of everything else, so I can't wait to see it and for people to read it and just sort of revisit some of these things. The cover looks very much like our Dispersing the Fog cover art on the podcast. Unintentional
Yeah,
on both cases, I guess. So that's good.
no,
Some good
different
alignment there.
different publishers, and they went about their business the way they go about their business. I don't have much say.
And they at least gave you two copies because I see one over your shoulder there too
Yeah,
on
I
the
put
shelf.
one back there, and I'll be ordering more. So, but they will be available in stores probably next week, January 8th, June 8th. I mean, June 8th, June 9th, 10th.
Yeah. And well, I'm sure when the release date comes, Paul, you always see authors or when a movie's released or whatever, there's the press tour. So hopefully you'll be getting out around and doing some
But
interviews
in the
about
old
it.
days, you used to get on a plane and go places. Now you just do all Zoom. You
Oh
stay
yeah.
in the same place. I mean, I have a number of things are already lined up. Apparently, I'm doing an hour on the radio in Halifax on June 9th, talking about it. And there's a couple of other national ones I'll be doing as well as podcasts and stuff like that.
Well, that's good. That'll pique a lot of interest in the book, and yeah, that'll be great. We've been the anticipation has been building for this, so looking forward to getting a chance to read.
Yeah, tell me about it. It's
Yeah,
like
you
the
must.
longest, it's like being pregnant for 3 years,
Yeah, and I was going to say, and the baby, you've already had the baby, but nobody can see it yet.
Yeah, we can't take the cover off because
Yeah.
some
No
might think,
gender reveal yet.
yeah, it's kind of ugly. So
Jeez. All right, so Paul, I guess we could start with this is just a little update, not a little, there's an update from last week. We talked mainly about two stories last week. One was these missing children in Pictou County, Nova Scotia. Not really much has happened with that this week. There's been a continuation of the investigation, a few little dribs and drabs, but nothing really substantial there to report. But the other story we covered was the hockey player trial, the sexual assault trial, jury trial, formerly jury trial in London, Ontario, with the five former World Junior hockey players charged with sexual assault of a woman. There's all kinds of details coming out about what took place in the hotel room and this sort of thing. But what happened this week was a little bit unusual. Well, there's two things. Uh, people will know that they've lost a second jury, and the reasons for that. We talked about that last week. Uh, so this week, what's happened was there was a witness, Brett Howden, who plays for the Las Vegas Golden Knights, testified via Zoom or by video from Las Vegas. Now, the first day he testified, there was some commentary that he didn't look like he was very respectfully dressed. He had just a hoodie on and kind of disheveled. Somebody must have told him that that was the case, or because the next day he had a nice collar and was a little more respectfully dressed at least. But he was in the room at different points, wasn't involved in any of the sexual activity, but was a witness and was involved in the text chain. Had given a statement to Hockey Canada a few years ago. So what was happening was he was called by the Crown prosecutor, but he was really effectively becoming a witness for the defense and didn't remember a lot of things. And so the prosecutor did a very unusual move, which was apply to cross-examine their own witness. Now, you normally can't do that. You have to call witnesses that are favorable, and you can ask open-ended questions. The difference in cross-examination is you can ask leading questions. You can put statements to people and say, well, do you still agree with this? And be very pointed about it. With direct examination of your own witness, you can say, okay, what did you do next? What do you remember? And just sort of open-ended, and you can't really guide as directly. Well, Brett Howden apparently had given statements previously to Hockey Canada where he had said certain things that were incriminating, talking about different activities that were happening in the room, and then all of a sudden on the stand couldn't remember. So the Crown suggested there were 18 of these incidents of Howden not recollecting properly and applied to cross-examine him. The defense disagreed, and the judge ultimately ruled that he would only be cross-examined on a very, very limited couple of, four of the 18 supposed discrepancies. Anyway, it's another sign to me, Paul, that this trial is not going well for the prosecution. This is something they had interviewed Howden in Calgary a couple of years ago, that he was having memory issues then. Something that really, like, before any Supreme Court trial, particularly a jury trial, the lawyers for both sides have to fill in very detailed forms. And the purpose of those forms, the pretrial conference form, is to alert the judge to any potential evidentiary issues or legal issues that they're going to have to be determined during the trial. And this is something that really should have been anticipated by the Crown, wasn't. They kind of, after Howden testifies and doesn't remember things, they all of a sudden, well, we want to cross-examine him and here's an application. Well, it's a bit of a complicated application. And I think actually that Howden should have had his own representation, because the Crown is basically saying this witness is lying, potentially perjuring himself, and they just bring it up out of the blue. Something that should have been done way in advance. And it's just perplexing that the Crown wouldn't have just kind of they just sprung this on the judge at the last minute. And so another sign that it doesn't seem to be going well.
well, it gets into what we talked about last week about those Hockey Canada statements. We said, in the discussion last week, we talked about how these statements were made, and Hockey Canada coerced these statements, saying that if you don't give a statement, you'll never play hockey again.
Yeah.
And then the next day, it came out that, oh, those statements were not going to be used. But then this Howden thing comes up about those very statements to Hockey Canada.
Yeah.
It's all very, very confusing. And the other thing about this was the police were not going to lay charges here. My understanding of it, the police were not going to lay charges, but then feminist groups got involved from the University of Western Ontario and were lobbying and protesting and raising a stink about no case being brought here, and sort of dragged the justice system, and it seems the victim as well, into the case, which makes it a very difficult.
It does. Some of these groups, I don't think they do particularly the victim any favors. I mean, this is a tough case, and I've spoken to Crown prosecutors here that are wondering why the case was ever brought to trial because you need to have a reasonable prospect of conviction. There doesn't seem to be a strong case. There's certainly a lot of evidence going the other way. But, you see these protesters outside the courthouse every day. I suspect the Crown office there is getting calls. I'm sure there was lots of pressure felt one way or another to bring this case forward, even though just strictly looking at the merits of it, I don't think it would be sufficient to bring it to trial.
Well, especially since there's already been a civil settlement beforehand.
Yeah. I think now, Paul, that this judge is under tremendous pressure because of dismissing the jury the way that she did. That the juror thought that one of the lawyers was looking at them and making fun of them. Maybe was, maybe wasn't. Something that like that could have been cleared up, I think, with an instruction to the jury to disregard that stuff. Listen, it's the lawyer, it's not the client anyway. Like, just totally disregard that and move on. And now, because the judge, I think, overreacted and removed the jury, that now the defendants have a built-in ground of appeal if it doesn't go their way on the verdict. So we'll keep an eye on that. That's back in court there tomorrow. Not sure who else the Crown has left for witnesses, but we'll see that, and we'll see if the five defendants end up taking the stand themselves. So keeping an eye on that. Okay. Next thing I wanted to, maybe we'll stick with lawyers for a minute, Paul, and talk about this Halifax situation. We wanted to bring this up last week. It's come out a couple of weeks ago, a decision from Justice Gabriel of our Supreme Court relating to the identification of three lawyers that might be involved in a situation surrounding Billy Sparks. Billy Sparks was a lawyer in Halifax, did a lot of youth matters, was accused fairly credibly, it would seem, of having solicited sexual favors from some of his youth clients, would buy them things, take them places, let them stay over, and all very, very inappropriate stuff. The the Bar Society seemed to have been alerted to this, and soon thereafter, Billy Sparks was found dead, committed suicide. So what's the controversy? Well, there's a complaint there's as part of the search warrant, information to search Billy Sparks's office for information that might, reveal more about what he was into, which clients, all those things. It came out that that he might have been tipped off, that he probably was tipped off about the investigation and may have had an opportunity to hide some evidence. Doesn't sound like he successfully did this, but he had the opportunity. So how did that happen? Well, in Nova Scotia now, victims of sexual crimes have the ability to get some legal advice. And it seems that one of the victims of Billy Sparks had took that opportunity to get some legal advice as to what would be involved from the victim's perspective. Whoever the lawyer was that said that to that gave that advice spoke to somebody who spoke to somebody who told who called up Billy Sparks and says, "Oh, Billy, I hear you might need a lawyer. I'm here if you need me." And so that's the first Billy Sparks, apparently, according to the report, the search or the information to obtain the search warrant. That's how Billy Sparks became aware of these charges or the potential charges. So, okay, then what? Well, the question is, should the public know the names of these lawyers? And Justice Gabriel says no, that the charges, that the allegations against the lawyers at this point are not substantiated. The Bar Society is aware of them, but within the stages of the Bar Society's investigation process, it has not reached the level where the names would be made public. Okay, so when you go get investigated by the Bar Society, it might just be resolved with a discussion or nothing. It might, there's levels, and then at a certain level, your name becomes public. Well, Justice Gabriel said it hasn't reached that level yet. There is a public interest in maintaining, faith in these lawyers particularly, or the system generally, and so we will not reveal their names. So that's a
This
little
is
controversial.
OSHA. You're a lawyer there, and I'm not going to ask you to comment on this. But in the police I talk to, and a lot of people involved in the justice system, they tell me it's an incestuous place where the lawyers and the police all basically work together, and that it's somewhat unseemly, and that sort of fits with the backroom traditions of Nova Scotia, where things get done in the dark and no one talks about it, and the lack of accountability in the province, where this instinct for keeping things hidden. My book is called The Anatomy of a Cover-Up. It's in Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
What you're telling me doesn't surprise me because that's what I found all along. It's a very secretive place and people are protected. The
Yeah.
people on the you don't have to comment on that. That's just what I hear on the street.
Yeah. No, that's something to see. So we'll see. I mean, this may not be done yet. I mean, if it elevates for any reason within the Bar Society process, then the names would be revealed at that point, and the public can make their own judgments about it. And so that may yet emerge further. All right, so there's Nova Scotia. We're gonna go out west now and talk about a couple of cases out of Calgary that were recently in the news over sentencing decisions. Do you want me to set these up, Paul, and then
Well, you've been doing a lot of talking, so maybe
yeah, why
I'll.
don't yeah, you know the ins and outs. I've been reading these stories too, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on them.
Well, there were two cases reported 2 days ago. Very similar, two different murders, two different outcomes. In the first case, the headline on CBC is depraved beating, drugging, dismemberment of young man nets 8-year sentence for Calgary drug dealer. And then the second headline, same day, life sentence for Calgary man who shot drug dealer in the back. So what is the difference in these cases? Well, in the case where the second case, there was a dispute. A woman was involved. Um, the a man was shot. The defense was, I wasn't trying to shoot him. I accidentally shot him in the back, and the drug dealer died. The drug dealer had come to collect some money, had his back turned, seemed to be leaving, and got shot in the back. So the shooter in that case Sam Frank Barbera, gets a life sentence, minimum parole of 11 years. In the previous case, another drug dealer case, an attack, a beating was rendered on a man named Darren Keenan Crane in April 2022, and a man named Darren Bulldog, who was a drug dealer, beat him, was involved in giving him a fatal fentanyl shot, and then they dismembered the man and scattered his body over, hell's half acres. His body was found on the formerly known as the Morley First Nation Reserve. It's now called the Minitini First Nation. And in his sentence, whereas the first guy got a life sentence with 11 years minimum parole, this fellow who tortured the guy, fentanyl shot, dismembered the body, got 8 years. And why did he get 8 years? Because he was a native and he had a terrible upbringing as a kid. What do you think?
So, just on the facts themselves, Paul, I think that the Bulldog murder is much worse. Like the group tied up this guy that owed $300, beat him up and tied him up, and then hit him with a shot of fentanyl. They call it a hot shot, enough to kill him. And then stupidly, well, anyway, these people are not
And
think.
and, and the $300 that he owed it because the drugs he was meant to sell were confiscated by the
Yeah,
police.
yeah, they weren't. It wasn't like he did anyway. He didn't necessarily do something improper within that world. He got busted by the police. So that seems a little unfair in itself, but it just seemed like these guys are not smart. You'd think, okay, if you're going to give somebody this shot of fentanyl and they die, isn't your defense going to be, well, we didn't kill him. He did that himself. He gave himself too much drugs and he died. And, so sad, right? Like, but instead they dismember the body. And anyway, it seemed like a terrible approach if you're trying to get away with murder. Maybe he wasn't trying to get away with it. But
Well, the judge said that the crime is depraved,
like,
and goes on talking about how the violence and all of the things that happen. But then we get down to the suspects, or the accused, Gladue report, talking about his young life and that he was a victim of sexual abuse, et cetera, et cetera, and he deserves a break. The problem I have with this is the message is a terrible one for the law-abiding community. I mean, this guy will be on the street in no time, knows he can virtually get away with the most heinous kind of murder. And there seems to be no provision in the system. I know all the studies, I've read studies, I've seen it, I've seen the development of this process over the years, and there seems to be no sort of acceptance in the systems or recognition that many people who grow up in bad, appalling conditions turn out to be good law abiding citizens, and vice versa. People who grow up in the lap of luxury Donald Trump, turn up to be criminals. It's
yeah,
the individual and not just their environment and their upbringing.
those Gladue reports, Paul, I mean, and that was right in the decision itself, are not meant to be an automatic reductionary feature, right? I mean, that's not supposed to be the case. You'll often see it. This strikes me as, and just again comparing the two, like getting shot in the back. The guy in the Bulldog case was beat up. He was effectively tortured before he was killed, and killed in a horrible way of a fentanyl overdose. I mean, and then the dismemberment. I mean, I would have thought they would be looking at this as a dangerous offender application, as somebody that would or maybe should never get out of jail, or not until he shows that he's capable or is reformed in some significant way.
Well, it is. It's an absolutely egregious case. Cutting up a body disposing of it. It's not found for 2 weeks. Um, it's entirely depraved. It speaks to a brain that is not going to be fixed very quickly in jail. And you're going to put him back out. The system is going to put him back out on the streets with essentially a license to kill.
Now,
And
here's
in the law-abiding community on that reserve or in Calgary itself, what are you supposed to do when these people are being let out for reasons that are sort of rather innocuous, disturbing? Like,
there's there was one sign, Paul, in the article that said, well, maybe there's a little more to this. And this is what I saw and thought about was, okay, the charge in the Bulldog case was reduced from second degree murder to manslaughter. It's not clear to me why that would have been the case, because if you inject somebody with a drug that's definitely going to kill them, that's an intentional act where at least there's a substantial risk that they're going to die. So an intentional act, that seems like second degree murder. It's they negotiated it down to manslaughter and negotiated the resolution. So is that the Crown Office being soft on crime, or was it there was a weakness in the case that that the other witnesses didn't give gave contradictory statements, or that maybe there was something else there that we're not privy to, but it doesn't seem on its face to make a lot of sense.
no, it doesn't. It always raises the question. Whenever I see this, I hate to go to the same well, but was somebody an informant involved in this and they're protecting someone and they cut a deal to protect someone?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe the guy had some information or whatever, but that's very peculiar. Yeah, the other guy got second degree murder, shoots a guy in the back. Well, even if you shoot and you're not planning to shoot him, well, if you're shooting towards somebody, there's a substantial risk that you're going to hit them. So that's makes sense there. So
And this guy, the guy was a drug user living in the garage in an area of Calgary. Um, he was living in the night before the killing. He and his girlfriend had been up all night doing crack and meth. The drug dealer arrived at the garage. He wanted money from the girlfriend. Um, one thing led to another. The guy picked up a shotgun because he was paranoid about being attacked. So he got himself a shotgun, fired one shot, hit the guy in the back as he was heading out of the garage. He said he meant it only as a warning shot, didn't know this was going to happen, and he gets life. It really, that I think that confidence in the justice system is being strained, where you're getting people who are getting passes because of their identity
hmm,
and their past and not what they really did. And this has come to the head in the States, and it's going to be becoming more and more a problem here because right through the justice system, people are getting passes, and when you give people passes, what did they do? It doesn't make them better or more law abiding. In my gut feeling is it makes a lot of them worse, gives them confidence, and gives them bragging rights that they did something terrible and heinous, didn't cost them a lot, and they're back on the street and don't mess with me. That sort of attitude. I think it's a bad message.
yeah, it is these Gladio reports. They're very detailed about a person's background and their heritage and these things. But like I say, you know, if you wrote that about a non-indigenous offender and got into their background and their history and upbringing, you're going to hear a lot of sad stories there as well, and difficult circumstances, family breakups, a lot of things that substance abuse in the family and all. You're going to read about all those things. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's no or less responsibility for the action that brings them to court. I mean, it's just not automatic. It has to be uh, anyway a deeper analysis than that. But really, I mean, and the other side of it is really a lot of the purpose of the Gladio reports is to think about what the punishment should entail. And of course, even if a person is going to jail for a long time, there's still things that can happen within the institution that are more culturally sensitive as well. And so it speaks to those kinds of things. Doesn't necessarily, it shouldn't necessarily mean less time. So, but
But
you know,
the issue
obviously there's
becomes,
examples.
is any government going to take this on? Because the people who advocate this are rather loud and noisy.
Yeah.
And all I want is someone to be rational and take things on balance and deal with it in a way that serves us the best public the best interests of society and the public interest.
It's okay. So, well, we'll I'm sure there'll be more such cases. Boy, this you're seeing a lot of these drug-related killings more and more. It seems like the one, the Bulldog case involved fentanyl. Yeah, the Barbera one, crack and meth, and that seems to be a problem right across the country. Um, Paul, I wanted to convert or switch the conversation over to this the Kelowna RCMP situation. Um, there was okay, so the news this week, it was funny. It kind of caught me off guard in this way because we've talked about the Surrey, BC RCMP detachment as being the largest detachment in Canada. And this article in CBC was talking about the Kelowna, BC, in the Okanagan region being the largest detachment in Canada. And I was like, wait a second. But of course, the Surrey, BC detachment is no longer the detachment. So now the current largest RCMP detachment in Canada, Kelowna, BC, is exploring, the city of Kelowna region is exploring getting bids for alternate police services. Again, looking to the 2032 date of the RCMP contract being up, and they're looking to see if they have other and better options. You surprised to see that coming along?
Oh no, this is inevitable. I mean, we've been talking about this for a number of years, that as 2032 approaches for the next 20-year round for contract policing in the provinces outside of Ontario and Quebec, it's becoming clear that the RCMP does not have the resources or the ability to fill these contracts. To they can't do what they say they can do, or they're going to be paid to do. They lost Surrey went and created its own police force. Surrey being the large borough suburb of Vancouver to the south that runs along the U.S. border of the state of Washington. Very large community. It was the RCMP's single largest contract detachment. They lost it after a hard fight, and Surrey Police Force is set up. Grand Prairie, Alberta, recently went over to their own police force, got rid of the RCMP. Kelowna now is looking at it because in these provinces in Alberta, the Alberta government has given communities an incentive to consider moving to municipal policing as a sort of a carrot to do it. And the RCMP union, for example, is fighting this tooth and nail. Other communities that are doing it are looking at doing it are the town of Hardisty and the town of Rocky Mountain House in Alberta. It's a big development. What it signals is that this system of policing is it coming to an end. And as we've talked about before, the problem is in places like Nova Scotia, where there seems to be no recognition this is happening elsewhere.
Yeah.
This is the trend. And if contract policing collapses in Alberta and BC, as it appears it's going to, and those provinces are going to set up their own provincial police, then it's going to end for Nova Scotia as well, and New Brunswick and PEI. And are they prepared for it? Or are they looking for another handout from the federal government? What do they want? There's no indication that they know what they're doing or they have a plan, and they should have a plan.
You know what it reminds me of, Paul? It's like when you get these, a mall, and town X has a mall and has an anchor tenant, and all of a sudden Zellers leaves. Well, it's going to be tough for that mall because the other tenants are, they're taking advantage of the customers that are drawn to the big anchor tenant. Well, here we have, Kelowna's detachment has 325 regular members. Now it covers a region outside of the city. The city of Kelowna has a population of 160,000, but there's a larger region around there that's covered as well. That's quite a few of the overall total RCMP members across the country.
Well, the the thing about it is Kelowna too is the crime and drug problem in Kelowna is getting, over the years has been getting worse and worse with the gangs setting up there, United Nations gang, Red Scorpions, others, bikers, Hell's Angels, and others setting up in that area because it's a nice place to be for their business, and the crime has gone up in those communities. The RCMP seems unprepared to basically deal with it. They're running new members through there, trying to they don't have experience, knowledge of the community. And I think that communities are seeing this more and more. On another note, there's a group called, and I talked about them a couple of weeks ago, the Canadian Coalition for Police Reform.
Yeah.
Last week, they sent a letter. I got a copy of it. They sent a letter to the Prime Minister, Carney, with a long, long, windy letter about fixing policing in Canada. Um, I would have put it down to two sentences: get rid of contract policing, improve federal policing, and have proper oversight. Three sentences.
Here's okay. Uh, Here's something I noticed from the story. And okay, so with the Surrey police conversion, I guess, conversion from RCMP to a municipal force, it really got bogged down in political back and forth, the between the mayor, the premier of the province, back and forth with those two levels. I noticed with this story out of Kelowna that the quote about and the person that was put forth by the city of Kelowna to speak about it was not the mayor, not anybody prominent. It was the community safety director, a staff person. Darren Call is his name. So I wondered if this is a conscious uh, new approach, a consciously new approach to depoliticize this kind of discussion a little bit. All right, let's just have a rational discussion about it. Let's not make it inflame it by having the mayor speak or, calling out the premier in any way or doing any of those things. Just, all right, this is a budgetary thing for the municipality. It's a big line item on our budget. And so we're going to review it and just sort of do it in a bureaucratic, workmanlike kind of manner.
Well, that's a pretty good observation because the problem that happened in Surrey, as happened in BC prior to what happened in Surrey, was that when politicians, including the former Premier Glenn Clark, a former Solicitor General, I think it was Cash Heed, and Doug McCallum, the mayor of Surrey, what happened to all of them when they advocated taking the RCMP out either as the provincial police force or as the municipal police force in Surrey? All of them were charged with a criminal offense. All of them had that charge go away after a decision was made to keep the force, keep the RCMP. That's what happened. This is how dirty it gets. And on the ground, you have the RCMP Veterans Association and the RCMP Union spending all kinds of money advocating, basically telling lies about how good the service is, how wonderful things are, how the RCMP is cheaper than anyone else. It's not the case. And I mean, you're seeing this sort of um, the the fire starting to build, and anger with the RCMP growing in isolated or incidents across the country, which might appear to be isolated, but it seems to suggests that people are not happy with the RCMP, and polls show that the happiness and satisfaction with the force has plummeted in recent years. I mean, you have little incidents like the RCMP cruiser stolen in New Brunswick last week and driven to Nova Scotia. No alert put out. Why did that happen? How did that happen? A couple of weeks ago, you had someone steal an excavator, go into an RCMP compound with the excavator, and destroy 5 police cars with the excavator. You had the detachment in Fort Nelson set on fire last week. I mean, it's crazy. Like, people are not happy with the RCMP, and the RCMP seems incapable of addressing this dissatisfaction.
It's gonna, yeah, and this movement is gonna keep going across the country, I think, as the date approaches. But I think the way Kelowna is going about it is kind of interesting because think of it from the political leadership perspective. Well, they're not necessarily even directing this. They might be okay, well, yes, you can review it. And so if anybody, any voter or anybody interest group is saying, well, why are you doing that then? Well, listen, we haven't made any decisions yet. We're just doing a review, and then you can give that answer for a while. And then when the review comes in, as the politician, you can sort of hang back, see what the public reaction is to the review, and then just sort of read the which way is the wind blowing and go that way if that's the way you wish to do it. It's an effective way, I guess, to not it's not it's not leadership in a certain sense, but it's a way to get things done. It's just all right, see where the public is with this kind of decision. Is it even controversial? Maybe it isn't once the review comes out.
Well, no, it is the probably the only way to do it. And plus the government or the Kelowna municipal government knows that the province of BC is on side with them doing this. Because the province of BC subsidized Surrey to move over and create their own police force and take the RCMP out. And presumably they'll do the same thing for Kelowna. In Alberta, I mean, they've set up a marshal service and they're encouraging Danielle Smith, the premier, who's very pro Alberta and less interested in having the federal government policing their province. She wants to move that way, and she has signaled that she will do it. And the rest of Canada has to pay attention. I mean, what we need, and I'll get back to what we said, months ago. When Donald Trump complains about lack of drug enforcement in Canada, he's specifically talking about the lack of federal policing by the RCMP and the inability of the RCMP to do its job. So we've given him an opening to attack us, and we have to fix the problem in our house. And we need a government that's basically committed to doing long-term things for the benefit of the country and get, the force has outlived its usefulness in its present form. Let's move on and do something modern. And that's happening slowly but surely. I'm confident of that.
It'll be an interesting. So, thinking again a little bit politically here, we have a new justice minister under the new government. It's Sean Fraser, who's a Nova Scotia MP, a lawyer as well. This issue, so people, Alberta, all of a sudden there's brewing separatism movements in Alberta and looking for more provincial rights and getting the federal government away from any encroachment on provincial rights. Well, listen, here's a good issue that where something like that, it's a way of addressing the issue in a way I think that can make everybody happy, right? If the federal government agrees, okay, Alberta, you can do your own policing, we'll stick to federal policing. That might be, I guess, a way to, ease the tensions on the federal provincial front without without making it about pipelines, which seems to be what Alberta wants to make it about.
And I think it's absolutely necessary. I mean, if we're going to have a country that, that works and works properly, the justice system has to be fixed. We have complaints. You look at prominent journalists in the last couple of days, and some less prominent but sort of flaky. Andrew Coyne, George Stroumboulopoulos, each saying what I've been saying, you've been saying, and others have been saying for years about the ineffectiveness of the Canadian government, and it's not doing things it should be doing. They're not the only ones saying this, but they're most recently saying this. And when, this comes out and people read it and understand it, they're going to be appalled at what happened, that there is no oversight of policing in this country, and that we're sold things like a mass casualty commission that tells you it's doing this wonderful, dispassionate job when really the fix was in from the beginning, and they were fixing things the way they wanted it to go, not the way it should have gone.
By the way, just on all that, but here's an interesting, just an aside. We haven't heard anything really from the Mass Casualty Commission Implementation Committee, and since we had Scott McLeod on here at the anniversary, nothing's really come up in the past month. I guess that's only been a month or a little more. I would think, or I would wonder if anybody on that committee is thinking, that Paul Palango guy, he has a book coming out that's really going to say, probably going to say that we're not doing much and the things that we did do weren't really very effective. Maybe we should make some kind of announcement knowing that book release date is coming up and we're all going to be made to look bad, dragged through the mud a little bit in these interviews that he's about to do. Maybe we should put something out there policy wise to show that things are actually happening. If Anyway, if anybody was paying attention on the other side of these equations, you would think that's something they'd consider, wouldn't you?
Well, they always do that. I mean, one of the anecdotes in the book that I have is, when uh, Andrew Douglas of Frank magazine was put money forward to challenge the mass casualty decision on the videotapes at the Irving Big Stop, and wanting to get them all out. One of the discussions Andrew and I had was, what trick are they going to do to deflect attention away from all of this? And we both laughed about it because we knew they were going to do something, and they did, and they made it disappear. But I didn't go away. Andrew hasn't gone away. You haven't gone away.
No, that's right.
It was all because we knew they were going to do it. That became part of the story and
Yeah.
how they did it. But that's only a small part of the story. So will they try something with this? Go for it. But I think that the stories and the way that I've dissected what happened, my story is going to last longer than whatever changes they want. I'm confident that people are going to say, I can't believe they did that. I can't believe they did that. Now I see how they organized all that. And we'll get into this in 2 weeks, 2 shows from now. So
Yeah, I can't wait to do that. Well, it doesn't bode well though that we had this missing cruiser there recently and nobody really seemed to talk about it or know about it or they didn't tell anybody about it. So
well, that's the old way. Somebody
yeah.
stole an RC, overpowered, as I understand, an RCMP officer and took their cruiser, which again begs questions. How does an RCMP officer get overpowered while the keys are in the ignition? Um, I want to know why was that officer either how strong was the person who took the car, and how strong and crazy were there, or how weak and unprepared was the RCMP officer that they couldn't defend themselves physically.
Yeah.
It makes for a dangerous situation for everyone, compounded by the fact that the RCMP will not put out a public alert in that situation.
Yeah, it's a concern, and anyway, we'll see if they come out with any announceables in the next couple of weeks to try to uh, give a counter side to whatever publicity your book raises.
And further to last week, one of the things that came up last week, the accident near Windsor, Nova Scotia, where
Yeah,
5 people were killed. and the RCMP said they were intensively searching for the drunk driver. 4 hours later, the drunk driver is going the wrong way on the one highway in the area, the one expressway in the area, going the wrong way on it. 4 hours later, I want the RCMP to prove that they did an extensive search. I haven't seen anyone bring this up. I'm going to bring it up over and over again. I want someone who's watching this, if they have access, give us the documents, give us the tapes, show us what the extensive search was for that car that crashed and ended up with 5 people dead and someone in the hospital in critical condition.
Yeah, that's key. And like I said last week too, that could be the basis of a civil suit as well, potentially. So
And I'm not going to
remember,
drop it. Like we got to bring it up all the time.
yeah,
If you say in your public press release, did an extensive search, prove it.
yeah.
You
Those
know,
words were not accidentally put there.
yeah, and we've seen for 5 years as the Nova Scotia massacres, a lot of what the RCMP says and other police forces sometimes is just hot air, made to make them look good.
So, Paul, we're nearing the end of our time here. A couple of things. First of all, we're taping this. We're taping this sort of late afternoon when the Oilers game is just starting. So I don't know how things are going there now. Hopefully, by the time people are watching this, the Oilers will be up 2-1 in the series over Dallas. But what I really wanted to ask you about is, are you excited about King Charles III coming to Canada tomorrow to read the speech from the throne? Are you a big monarchist, or what are you? Any feelings on that?
No, I'm not a big monarchist. I've never been a big monarchist.
No.
You know.
Well, it'd be great to anyway. King Charles. It's still hard to get used to that one, but anyway, I guess he's coming.
Yeah, he's coming, and it'd be good if after he gives the speech, the Canadian government decides to reorganize the country, make it strong, independent, and stand up to the Americans and make the Americans respect us.
Well, I'm sure Donald Trump will be very impressed that King Charles has come over here to read the speech from the throne and display the British might against the American aggression.
Such as it is, yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, that's great for this week, Paul. And so thanks everybody for watching and thank you for listening. And we'll see you again next time. All right, see you next week.
See you later. Thank you.